Welcome everyone to this second mini mastermind. The topic today is finding your voice. I'm Laurence Knott. I'm a transformational coach and therapist. And yeah, this conversation is about how people can find their voice. When I created this, I had in mind the kind of person who I often help in coaching and therapy. I help them change their outlook and mindset around relationships in particular. And what they might experience with the problem they come to me with, being bullied, people taking advantage of them and exploiting their goodwill, struggling to get their voice heard in particular relationships, whether it's with a partner, friends, family, work colleagues. And as a result, ultimately living in a fear of the consequences of putting themselves first, or telling someone how they really feel, doing something different as if they're in a sort of a pattern. And they don't want to disrupt it. And from what I've seen, the personal impact of that can often be feelings of loneliness, insecurity, isolation, and ultimately living in fear. And so in this conversation, which could go anywhere and everywhere, which is a great thing, we might explore personal experiences of what I've just been sort of profiling, if you like, professional experiences as coaches and therapists in other dealings in our lives where we've seen some change or transformation. We've seen someone, if you like, go from one place to another and actually have an insight. And I'm really interested in all of this, the role of the misunderstanding of where all psychological experience is coming from in creating the perceived reality of not having a voice. And everything that goes with that, and everything I was describing before, it seems real in someone's world, in their separate reality. And I'm really interested to hear from everyone about how insight into where experience is coming from can really transform and basically have such a big impact on someone's state of mind, and impact on their overall well-being as a result, so that it impacts in every aspect of their life. Where they had previously, experienced difficulties and had challenging relationships and not had their voice heard, or they perceived that they didn't have their voice heard. So without further ado, I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves and tell us briefly what brings them to this conversation, starting with Sandie. Welcome, Sandie.
Hello, thank you. I'm Sandie Martel. I'm a transformative coach, working mainly with people going through divorce and separation, and people who have very low self-esteem and confidence. And the reason I wanted to participate in this was because I've been all my life, or nearly all my life, I was very, very shy. So it's something that's really speaks to me. And also you were talking about bullying, and my daughter's been through bullying recently, and she's been many years ago as well, but more recently as well. So it's something I'm very interested in exploring.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandie. And handing straight over to James.
Well, I'm James Day, the risk-free trading coach. That is mainly what I do with this understanding. But I've been classified as shy when I was a teenager and growing up in my 20s. And since finding out about the three principles and the understanding, the shyness has diminished quite a lot. I wanted to get on this conversation with you guys to contribute some of my own experiences of how I've transformed, right from every area of my life, being, friendships, standing up for myself a lot more, being more assertive, but not forcing myself to be more assertive. It's just happened naturally. And I think that's been a major thing for me, where I always used to try and control my behavior, feel that I should be someone, I should be more assertive, I should be more confident and, speak out loud a lot more. And it just happened so naturally. I guess that if I could wish that to happen to anyone. Maybe some of my own experiences could contribute to that. So let's enjoy the conversation. Great.
Lovely, James. And I hear that around the shoulds and musts, the way we think things need to be. So brilliant. Over to Gunter.
I'm Gunter Straub. I'm doing transformational coaching. And I'm just curious about the topic. So I'll see where it goes from here.
An open mind. Fantastic. And welcome to Anne-Lise. Thanks for joining us. You only missed a few minutes of just me giving a brief overview. If you just want to tell us what brings us to this conversation and what you do and what you're interested in.
Yeah, I'm like Gunter says, I'm open-minded and curious about, and really wanted to join in and make this kind of the starting of my new coaching, the 3P based coaching instead of the coaching I have been doing, because I see this as really so liberating and so much better in a way. Not better that other types of coaching aren't good, but it's when we understand how life really works and how simple it can be, and the flow and the possibilities that opens without having to do everything, fix everything, change everything. So I'm just excited to be here and curious about the topic today, and the rest of the journey here.
Fantastic. And I'm already hearing some themes linked to what James was saying. And just for anyone who's new to this kind of conversation, when we say 3Ps, we're talking about the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. And when we talk about how life really works, well, that's going to unfold in our basically the stories we tell and the conversation we have right now in terms of how all psychological experience really works. And so finally, handing over to Julie to introduce herself. Welcome, Julie.
I'm Julie Booth. I'm training to be a coach with James Knott. My interest in the subject is very personal, having had experience of social anxiety in my life, and I have also experienced workplace bullying. I have experienced change since coming to have a deeper understanding of the 3 principles. That's impacted on my life significantly. And it is my intention to take this out into the world.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julie. And I can hear you. Just next time, basically, when you speak, you just bring it a little bit nearer so anyone listening and watching they don't have to adjust their volume too much. But I could hear you. So thank you very much for that. So, well, without further ado, I don't know if this kind of conversation where I might say something, but if someone feels that anything that came up in what we're talking about there, just feel free to come in. And if you're muted, just, something that really, pricked my interest in this area, really. And when I sort of started developing the idea, it's like, a lot of the people I have worked with, they've got some label attached to them. I remember a recent client talking about, I'm codependent, and she was very fearful of leaving a particular relationship. And basically there was so much thinking there. And yes, it got manifest in certain behaviors, and she had various coping strategies and everything that, if you like, impacts someone who's experiencing a life of anxiety and stress related to relationships and not getting their voice heard. But spending so much of her time thinking about it and actually preoccupied, and it's on her mind. And I've seen it with other clients too that come to me for coaching and therapies. They do have a lot on their mind. So when I was thinking about, when people are being bullied, taken advantage of, when they're perceiving that they're a second-class citizen in a particular transaction, if you like, interaction with another human being or an ongoing relationship, and they say, yeah, I just don't get my voice heard, and they don't listen to me. They just don't want to listen. Ultimately, they've got a lot on their mind, and I'm always curious about how are they really interacting in that situation, that transaction between two human beings, where, yeah, if someone is a bully in someone's thinking, well, actually, they probably are acting in a bullying way. And I'm sure we've all seen it in our lives. It's like, it doesn't line someone's thinking, and they, you know, the idea you just need to stand up for yourself and get your voice. It's more complex than that. That person is in a reality, and yeah, there may be behaviour that you could be comfortable saying, yeah, that is aggressive behaviour, that is bullying behaviour, and they are treating you unfairly. Now, in the role of someone coming to me for support, ultimately they want change, not just change in their thinking, they want change manifest in their life. And okay, I'm interested in people's views about, well, can you change someone else? Or is it you can turn up differently and influence the way that relationship is played out? So yeah, any initial thoughts on my little sort of spiel there? Pretty much off the top of my head. So yeah.
I'm just going to jump in now because we're talking about bullying, and it's something that, as I said earlier, my daughter's been through. And it's true that, you know, I was thinking earlier, and actually I've asked a question, and I'll tell you a bit more about this, but I was thinking earlier, is it just to do with, it's not just to do with, it's to do with the way we think about the way we're being treated, of course. But also, I mean, there is a certain behavior there. We can't just accept whatever's coming our way. So, you know, my daughter's really suffered from this, really suffered. But it's just being able to give her or get her to understand that she's got more power than she thinks she has, you know. Mm-hmm. And I've actually asked her just earlier. I said, what for you is in relation with your title? You said about finding your voice, and she went straight on to the bullying thing. And she said, well, for me, finding my voice is actually knowing who I really am. And I mean, you know, she's 11, but I think that she really gets it now, and she doesn't get problems now anymore. But it's just, I think that's exactly about this. It's about understanding who you really are, and understanding that you have power in a way. You know, you've got some. It's the way we think about ourselves. We think that we're giving the power away to somebody else, you know, whereas we do have power, but we don't really know it. We don't necessarily know it. So it's a great thing to explore.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, so speaking as someone who was bullied as a teenager, you know, at the time I was very much affected by it, you know, feelings of loneliness, being isolated, you know, you're picked on at school, and you just feel so alone. You just feel so alone. And of course, I attributed those feelings of loneliness and, you know, and ultimately it was sad. It was, you know, you're cast out from the tribe, so to speak. It's that feeling. And I didn't understand where it was really coming from. You know, it's sort of thing. If the same thing happened now, I would just shrug it off, probably say, you know, make a joke out of it, and you know, it wouldn't affect me. It's the water off the duck's back. But that young age, you know, you're going through that, and having someone to talk to and understand your situation is probably the most powerful thing for that person being bullied. And I think, you know, there's a lot going on for that person that's being bullied. And, you know, there's blame on the bullies themselves if they don't understand, of course, where their experience is coming from. And, you know, it's not a nice place to be. yeah, so
Could I just ask a question here? What's the most impactful consequence or aspect of being bullied? Is it the bullying or is it being excluded?
yeah, it's definitely for me. It was the exclusion, part that it's something Sandie said. It's having a voice. You think about the person being bullied. They're the one being sort of pointed out as being different. Often it will be, oh, this person's fat, fatty over there or something like that. And it's celebrating uniqueness of someone. The person being bullied, often they get affected by it. But I'd say that, sometimes not knowing where your experience come from, you become a victim of the circumstance rather than rather than taking power in that circumstance. And it's innocently done when you don't know where your experience is coming from.
Could I just ask as a follow-on, is there such a thing as silent bullying?
Silent bullying?
Exclusion, without the...
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I guess it's the same as passive aggressive, isn't it?
My experience of bullying was as an adult. And along with that came embarrassment that in my mid-30s being bullied by a colleague. And I think the worst thing was a sense of powerlessness, knowing how to approach the situation. If I'd have had this understanding then, I could have viewed the whole situation so differently. And the outcome would have been very different as well. It was devastating. It was. I think that terms like bullying are bandied around too lightly. I think the impact of bullying can be just that devastating on people's lives. And if we have the opportunity to give people an understanding of where their experience is coming from, the outcome can be so different.
Some fantastic shares there. Was there anything you wanted to say, Anne-Lise, before I sort of try to sort of shape some themes from what we've been sharing so far?
I would like, because I have also, when I was maybe 10, 11, around there especially, I had the experience of being bullied, and I think the thoughts or the conclusions made of that experience that kind of has been dragged along as truth about not being good enough, not being worthy, all these things. That also, I'm just thinking generally in the topic of the conversation today, it kind of impacts, at least it has for me, or did for me earlier, how I related to people, always kind of feeling like the underdog, even though I tried to hide the reality that this had been an experience. I really tried to cope with it myself, and hardly anyone probably know that was going on, but still. And no, yeah. I'm thinking, I have my daughter, she is 4.5, and she's born with something called micro-T. I think it's about this. It's one of her ears is a little underdeveloped, and now people or kids are starting to notice and asking questions, and I can feel, because of my own experience, even though I know it's in the past and all this, but on some level, I can really feel that, oh, I don't want her to go through. I just want her to know that she is unique, she is special, she is just perfect the way she is, and give her the strength to be different, because it is different when you don't have two normal looking ears. But yeah, so I think I would like to have some reflections on how to guide a young child who are kind of like in the position more likely maybe than others. But then again, it depends on, I think, the inner strength, because you have all these stories about kids, or like where there has been things in the family, maybe the parents doing things and there is one saying no and it doesn't happen. So it has a lot to do with ourselves and the unconscious maybe permission we give that we're not aware of.
Unconscious permission for what?
For being the victim in a way. Instead of, because we don't realize or we don't know that we really are much more powerful and worthy. Maybe, I don't know.
And that's brilliant. And I've just been taking some notes. You know, the themes that I've noticed coming up here, and I think it was linking what you're saying there to what Sandie was saying about who you really are. And once we do become a victim, stuff out there is happening. People are behaving in a different way to us. They are picking on us. They are taking out basically a lot of their misguided thinking out on us. And then we get into that loop and it gets played out. And that's created a story in our mind. And how can you get away with that? And we've ceded that power of who we really are and the power we have over our own experience. And already you guys have been pointing out, the role of parenting within that about, one of the early things that came up for me was about, it's the acceptance of the group. And Gunter's question, that's what I was hearing. That social validation when you're young, right from going, to nursery, it is about, I don't know, it's within our genetic makeup to seek approval, to be part of the group. And that, genetic predisposition to notice difference. Oh, they're a bit different. And, well, I can't imagine from my own experience about what then gets played out. And actually what I can say there is I compensate. I start moving away from who I really am. So in my own experience of having been bullied or picked on and you're a bit different, the enlightened mind's like, I'm okay with me. And when you don't react back and when you don't play to it and get into that interaction, and basically you haven't given your power away. It's like, but I'm okay with me. That sounds so easy to do. But that's where the world does start accepting you, or just they've got nothing to fight against. And going back to my personal experience is that where I compensate. So I end up moving away from who I really am comfortable being. I'm almost putting on a bit of an act. And people almost pick up on that lack of authenticity. We pick up on it in every aspect. It's like, there's something not quite right there. Well, it's the same for bullying. It's like, they're exposing a weakness. I'm seeing someone that isn't really who they are. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts about that, but when it seems like someone really isn't being themselves, then they are in a position of vulnerability. And, well, it seems in their thinking, in my thinking, that other people are taking advantage of that. Does any of that make sense? It's a bit circular.
No, it does make sense, though. I would have thought that the one thing we will never know who we truly are, because that would put a label on things. I'm thinking more in terms of having the confidence in one's own being, the confidence in one's own ability, which gives you the strength to deal with situations and, where appropriate, to walk away from it.
And what I'm hearing there, Gunter, that confidence to be able to tap into your wisdom, just do the right thing that's right for you, and not to engage in it. And you know what Anne-Lise and Julie were talking, it's just that victim thing, and then playing the victim, and then it just gets played out again and again. That does create a story, and that creates a lot of thinking. And where within all that thinking of that identity, that role, your ideas of who you are and what's going on, yeah, the good stuff just can't get through. So how can you express some kind of voice, some kind of authentic voice, something that, for want of a better phrase, does express your needs, or just allows you to be without thinking about the consequences? You're just living your life without seeking approval from other people, worrying about how they'll react, worrying whether you'll be rejected, worrying whether a pattern will not just be continued, but exacerbated and made worse. And it's like that, you know, in my mind, it's like, yeah, people then, you know, you walk around eggshells with a certain kind of person. You start having to control your behavior, and going back to what James was saying right at the start, feeling that you've got to control the world and ultimately control yourself. And as soon as you're in that mindset of needing to control your behavior, and from what we're talking about, ultimately it's an isolated thing where you're not speaking up. You're just not talking. You're not connecting with other people. And all I know is, as a result of that, you're spending a lot of time, you might be with other people, but as people say to me, it's like, yeah, I feel so lonely in this relationship. Has anyone heard anything there?
Two things come to mind, actually. Reactivity and fear. You see, what the transformations happen with myself is that I've become less scared of my own experience, and I've almost like delinked myself to reactivity to people's anger or aggression, or I would say that understanding where your experience is coming from, it's not coming from anything external, it's coming from the principle of thought in the moment. I can give an example of a work colleague that came to see me, and I saw that she was aggressive and angry, and it was something that I had done. I held my hands up. I said, you know, I'm sorry. I apologized. And it was the most amazing thing to experience someone's aggression and anger and not be affected by it at all. It washed over me. Whereas I think a younger version of myself would, almost like a tuning fork, it would feel that aggression, that anger, and then I'd get that emotional reaction, and, you know, I can feel it, and then I'd make meaning out of it. You know, oh, I'm a weak person because I always get affected by other people's emotional states. And I'd tell myself a story about it. Oh, it always happens. And then that has implications in itself. And I think after finding out about the three principles, that was a slow process of delinking myself. But to experience that moment of it just washed over me. And I could tell my work colleague also felt that instead of getting more angry and it building into like us, you know, pulling apart and having a big argument about it, by being non-reactive to it, she calmed down. And then within about a minute, I saw a smile on her face. So I think you know, I think when someone's being bullied, innocently they become the victim and they think that the situation, the circumstance is affecting them. I think once they're able to see where their experience is really coming from, it will naturally have an impact into the situation, and they'll become stronger and they'll naturally become more assertive, and things may change for them. So
I think it's easy to get into that conclusion that there is something wrong with me since things are happening. And then you take the blame and you take the guilt, and of course it's my fault that people behave this way, whether it's something with your behavior, looks, whatever. And then so I think it's really important as parents for us to show our kids that they are okay. You said something, Gunter, about confidence, and I think that innate confidence, whatever, it's like to make sure that that is there from the beginning, to build that in a healthy way.
But you see, in this context, how I see confidence is that I also see choices, and I can walk away from situations and can engage in situations.
Yeah,
I have that power
and you
within
have
myself.
the freedom in your own life if you have the.
What I think happens with, with people in those sort of situations is for them, they don't have the confidence. That's what they think, they don't have it. Whereas it's always there. It's there, but they can't see it because of all the thinking around who they think they are, so they can't really. Confidence is for me, is there. I didn't know that before, but now, just realizing this, just.
Yeah, I agree. It's there until we start believing all the feedback we get.
It's not even just believing, it's also, just basically understanding that we've got this within us, we've got resilience, we've got the confidence, it's all within, it's already there, but we don't necessarily see it.
Yeah.
We tend to think that, say, for example, I'll give you an example. When I was a teenager, I was starting to put on weight, and people starting saying to me, starting noticing that I was putting on weight and just saying, you're not going to go through this door, funny things, innocently, very innocent, but quite a few people were starting to say things like this to me. So I thought, it's not just one person saying that, it's a few people, so it must be true. So from then you start thinking about, well, maybe that's true. What they're saying is true about me. So this is who I am. I am fat, and the consequences of this can be very damaging. But understanding that you're more than what you think you are, and what, whatever people are saying, you're just much more than this. So much more.
That's beautiful, Sandie, and it's lovely the way everyone's just linking into each other's comments and personal stories there. And I love what you said, Gunter, about that confidence to have a choice, and linking it to what James said. It's like, not being afraid of your experience, which, as I see it, is a higher level of consciousness. You're seeing what is, and saying, that's in my experience right now, and actually 100% I am feeling the principle of thought taking form. So my feelings are just telling me about that, my experience, and I'm okay with my experience. And that confidence to be able to make a choice of, well, I love the question that Valda Monroe, wife of Keith Blevins, their pioneering work around the single paradigm. Is that true? In any moment, And I know it can be a really helpful little warning light for someone when they feel that they're slipping into that victim mode. They are at risk, if you like. And what was someone said earlier about what can you give your child or someone you want to support with this? Just helping them understand where their experience is coming from and not being afraid of that experience is one part of it. But in the moment, just like the way James beautifully articulated about, yeah, I'm not going to respond to the bully and their big red mist. And guess what? The red mist just descended. And what I heard for James there was like, well, this isn't true. Well, this isn't real. And guess what? It's definitely not about me. And just that, people say, oh, this isn't about giving someone a technique or a tool or a go-to thought, if you like. That comes with the understanding. But it happens in a moment, in a split second of, I'm seeing what is now rather than what isn't. And right now, that's not true. And that habitual reaction of slipping into victim mode, going quiet, ceding power, if you like, to someone in a social situation, well, that can just dissipate in a moment. And then it starts getting played out. And as we know, and as James was telling me before, it's once things start playing out, well, there's a ripple effect through the rest of your life. So, is there anything I sort of missed there in terms of what people are saying? Just, who's got the power? Who's got the power over each and everybody's psychological experience? And when people have an insight into, wow, I really do have absolute power over that. Not that I need to control my thinking, but out there does not have the power.
Yeah, maybe I'll mention something that came to mind as you were talking there, Laurence. Mainly about, the way we relate to our past. Because, being someone who was bullied as a teenager. And at the time, I remember thinking I didn't want to stand out. Because the people who stand out, they get picked on. So it was a kind of like defensive, maneuver on my part. Innocently done. And the way that played out for the next 20 years, I mean that one thought back then that I obviously believed to be true had a kind of ripple effect in itself, and that meant that many things I was pretty shy at speaking out, in a big group. And that comes with a feeling of, fear and dread. And it was only until I realized that, in the moment, the feeling's not coming from standing out. It's we all know where it's coming from. But it came to a point where I didn't blame my past. In the moment, I just recognized where my experience is coming from, and that's what changed. So I think you mentioned taking responsibility, and that can come in many forms. It can come in, recognizing you're not your past, you're not the thoughts about the past, that you can't, blaming your past for, how you are now. We all innocently do it. But that it's understanding where your experience comes from that makes the difference and makes the change. And that in any moment we can, you can change from someone who was being bullied and, thinking life sucks to suddenly, being okay. It can all change in a second. So with understanding.
Yeah, that's really the most liberating part of this understanding, I think. Not having to go back and release and fix something. And yeah, like you said, it's the principle of thought taking place in the moment, and it doesn't know anything. The feeling is just a reflection of that, or the other side of the coin. It's nothing about the past or the future or people or incidents. It's just the thought right there and then, and that's just something that passes by. It could be anything, and still it's kind of fascinating how we tend to grab the more negative ones many times and count them as more real, regarding to say something about what we think is reality, instead of where many people more kind of let the positive thoughts that passes by, maybe just as many at random, they go by more easily.
That's lovely. And you know what you're both saying about not having to go into the past. And James, you put it beautifully. You severed the link. And for those who've studied sort of neurology and psychology, and this pattern and this belief has been created in your identity, and then you've got a personality trait severed with one insight, because that's what I heard you had, James. You had a big insight. It's like, well, that's not true. And that was an insight into your experience in that moment. And who's got the power? Well, your past hasn't got the power over you, because that was just a misguided thought and a misunderstood set of thinking. And you say, yeah, but I've been like this all my life, and yeah, I've been codependent in all my relationships, and it's going to take ages to undo all this. Really? Okay, well, all I've seen personally from people, you know, I'm studying with around this, the three principles and this understanding, is this transformation can happen in a moment. So absolutely, yeah. Is there any other thoughts on that theme? Just not having to go in and fix something about who we think we are.
I think something that is really, really powerful about this understanding, certainly for me, was coming to realise I was never broken, that I was absolutely perfect. Coming out of that victim mode, and I for a long time felt like a work in progress. And when I realised the subtractive nature of this understanding, it was just so liberating that I didn't have to do anything. I could just allow. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Julie, and not having to do anything about it, and that's a really nice thing to maybe start exploring here. Right? Just the subtractive nature. Someone's got a little bit of background noise there, so let you mute yourself. But the subtractive nature, and what Sandie was saying earlier about all those things you've got going for you when you're not in this misunderstanding, when you're not in the misunderstanding that your feelings are coming from anything other than the principle of thought in the moment. It's not coming from that bully, that dysfunctional relationship, your thoughts about yourself. It's just not possible. And that subtractive nature of transformation and an insight, as James was saying, is that, what's left? And okay, that resilience and that natural confidence, that innate well-being that was there when, we were 2 or 3 years old and running around and having a new thought and having a new experience. And before we'd learnt and we'd been conditioned in a way to seek approval from others, or you need to be a certain way. Any thoughts on that? I've sort of started to thought there, but I think someone could probably continue it better than me there.
Yeah, I'm thinking, actually realizing that what's the only thing on the inside is this powerful source of love, resilience, yeah, all the clarity, and even who I believe I am. That's a thought constructed concept. It's not real. That's on the outside. And the way I experience all of you and everyone else, that's also just a concept. When it has a name, when it has a label, it's form. Whereas we are really these creative creatures, pure energy. And it can shift in a minute because it's not real. It's just constructed. It's just made up everything. So I can make a new version. You can make a new version. We can write a new movie, and it will, yeah, because the only thing that really is that essence of us. That's not broken. That's whole, and that will always be.
And that's lovely, Anne-Lise. And yeah, having access, like you say, to that powerful source of energy, which within 3 principles is known as universal mind, where that wisdom comes from, where our life experience really is coming from that formless place that then gets turned into form within our experience. And just like you say, when it's given a name, a concept, an identity, it's turned into something. And from my point of view, something within my thinking. And traditionally, from my study of NLP and psychotherapy around, these are my beliefs now. And what I believe impacts on my behavior. And I need to challenge these and play around with them. And what a lot of work that is. And for some people, they can achieve some kind of change and movement in their life when they challenge these thoughts. But seeing the true nature of where all experience is really coming from and the essence of life being played out within all of us. Just going back to my earlier notes, it's about, well, how does it then have that transformative impact on people? And from what James was saying, what you're saying, Anne-Lise, that when you have that insight of how life really works, and when you actually have a personal experience of it, it's like, this is new, this is different. Well, it's a house of cards. You've pulled that card out from underneath, right at the bottom, the one that brings the whole thing down. This constructed, perceived reality. And within that perceived reality that I am a victim, I'll always be bullied, I'll never change, I'll never have my voice heard, I'll never find my voice. And it's crazy to think it can be one insight away from creating the possibility that, wow, not only that change is possible, but transformation in all aspects of my life can be played out. And from my experience of when people ask me for advice around this kind of thing, maybe, they want something. They want to have that belief that something is possible. It is possible to change. And it's like, how can I deal with this person differently? They're always going to be like that. But you end up showing up differently to the world. And just like James said it, the world responds accordingly. And it happens just like that. And then suddenly, the way that person saw James, as I heard it, completely changed that person's perception of James. Like, whoa. And then that's going to get played out. And just think of that, what we talked about, the ripple effect, also known as the butterfly effect. And, you know, traditional psychotherapy talks about, make one change a critical area in a particular belief, and it will ripple through. And then as it gets played out day by day, week by week, you find yourself expressing your views, not being the victim, turning up in a different way. Well, that is nice as confirmation, as I would call it, that things are changing, things are transforming, and it can take a period of time. Yes, the transformation can be in a big whoosh of an insight, but then, you know, life's the contact sport where things play out. Different relationship, different circumstances. And I'd be interested in bringing it back down to, you know, sort of what you guys were talking about, what we can do as friends, mentors, family members, and as parents, as some of you were pointing out, to be able to point someone in that direction and help them. Things are beginning to change and notice, and really listening to them when they're telling those stories of just those little changes beginning to happen, because those big changes turn into the big transformation over time. Any thoughts on that?
I think when we really see it, because I guess that's just something we have to admit, that sometimes we see it and other times we don't see it that clearly. And when I'm in that space of clarity, I experience people asking me, it's like, what is this? What has happened? So I think when we are there, we kind of live as the needle pointing people towards something that they would like to. Because I've heard that people say, I want that too. What is it? This intouchable thing. And then, so I think the more we see and the more we live in this clarity, the more we will, without doing anything, I guess, helping people. Because it's the feeling kind of transmitting, it's expanding. It's like you throw a rock in the water and the rings will just spread out the vibration of this. And then also, if people come as a professional, of course, we can help them connect into this feeling state of reflection where we can open up and be curious that life might be a little bit different or than what we thought it, or how we have learned that it works. And in that curiosity, like you say, people can transform in an instant. And sometimes it takes a little longer because it's different areas. And so.
Lovely. And what I'll let James come in. He says that contagiousness. I think that's relevant for guys talking about parenting. It's like, well, when you're seeing it, you turn up differently. And that sort of rubs off without actually, okay, you will say things differently. You'll be more loving. You'll do this. But I don't want to call it a vibe, but there is something just like that ripple, Anne-Lise. But James, please come in there.
No, I was just going to say about what happens when someone gets bullied is that they develop a kind of fear of people. That, you know, people are something to be feared. And what happens when we understand things better and where our experience is coming from, that slowly people become more friendly. You don't take things so seriously. Words mean less, they hurt less. You know, there's the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but Words, we know what they do with. Just wanted to say how love flourishes. There's what I've noticed in myself is an unconditional love that develops when we stop blaming the world, and we stop trying to change it. We accept it, and we say, oh, that's just the way they are. We let them be. We let the bully be. We don't try to change them, but we understand it. We understand that, we're completely in control with the meaning we attribute and the way we are. And just this wonderful love flourishes. And it's a nice place to be. If there are any people being bullied out there, just know there is hope, and, wonderful things can happen. So.
That's lovely, James. And just adding to that, really, and for anyone thinking, but there's that bully, they're still there in my face. Well, that unconditional love, part of that is that compassion. And that's where a transformation is beginning to happen. Has already happened when you see the innocence of, we'll call it the bully, the innocence that it's making sense to them in their big, big misunderstanding that they need to control the outside world, that their well-being comes from being the bully. They don't really want to be the bully at heart. No one wants to be that, but they're locked in a misunderstanding. And when we see the innocent misunderstanding being played out all around us, as we all live in these separate realities, we can all say, but that person, he really is a bit of a rotter. I can't find any compassion for him. And I remember thinking that a few months ago. Well, that changes. It's almost like there's no exceptions with this. It just shows up in every aspect. And what Julie was saying, that subtractive nature, it's almost like there's sometimes, we talk about blind spots. It's like there's people that linger. It's harder for them to go, or someone we have a problem with in our thinking and a difficult relationship, and someone we maybe avoid, and a situation where, we live in the fear of the consequences and we don't want to assert ourselves. Well, that's just been at the back of our thinking. And we might just surprise ourselves when we start showing up in these new circumstances and stuff starts to unfold differently. Just like James was saying, it's like, oh, that's different too. And that's different too. Wow. So as we come towards an end, I want to give everyone an opportunity to just express what they've got from the conversation, any insights they've had, or anything they want to just contribute, just rounding off the conversation, and any other messages to anyone watching and listening to this about finding your voice.
I think it was a great to explore the subject, and I just hope that people watching this are going to see that there's hope out there. That there is hope. That, knowing that we create our realities from within, that really changes everything. That's changed everything for me anyway, and I guess for you too, and for everyone starting to understand this. And it's life-changing. I've put on my website, I used to think that I couldn't change and that people couldn't change. And then I realized later on, as I was starting to get into self-development and everything, I just started to understand that, actually, I can change, change can happen. But after that, I just went to another level, saying that, understanding that actually, well-being is our innate ability, our it's already there. So our well-being is already available to us in a way, which was great to see. So I hope everybody could see this. That'd be great and experience it.
Lovely, Sandie. And Anne-Lise, Gunter, or Julie?
Well, in my thinking, sort of, I'd like to get away from this word hope, because all change needs is a new thought, a different thought. And a new thought is only ever one thought away. And if I speak about hope, that's something sort of far away somewhere, possible or not possible. And when it comes to how we see ourselves, I think the best service we can do for ourselves, to ourselves, is to simply speak our truth.
And that sense of possibility. And I link, their words, isn't it? It's within hope is that, that one thought is there. And as someone was saying earlier, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. And the comfort that comes with being okay, not seeing it. And from the experience of working with people, we make progress, they have an insight, and then it's back down again. And it's being okay with that, because they've had that insight, they've seen that possibility, they've had an experience of life in a different way. Well, that's there, and it's always there for them. And a bad day, a bad experience, that doesn't mean anything. Whereas in the past, it would set a pattern off.
And I think knowing that no matter what we are, you are, anyone out there, everything is okay. No one is broken. There is nothing to fix. There is nothing to work on or develop. It's just trust that the real you is whole. The real you is resourceful. The real you is always there, like the sun behind the clouds, even though sometimes, but we never go out. I live in a very rainy place in Norway called Bergen, and I've never seen any people going out trying to fix or take away the clouds. So if we could just leave the thoughts, and because they will pass too, because we have this resilience, we will bounce back to the well-being. And I think just encourage people to go online and search for 3 principal material information if this is something that resonates with them, and to start exploring this understanding, and then magic can happen really, really fast.
Lovely. And Julie, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, as Sandie said, the fact that we create our own reality is very, very empowering. And the knowledge that we have this inbuilt resilience has the ability to carry us through in any given situation.
Lovely. And that's, I think, a nice way to end there. Just knowing that that inbuilt resilience is always there. And just like Anne-Lise was saying, we'll always bounce back. That's built into the system. We have a psychological immune system. And the fascinating thing in this conversation tonight, we've covered a lot of ground. And it always comes down to the same principles and the same misunderstanding, that when we split feelings from thought, and when we believe our feelings are coming from anything other than the principle of thought in the moment, that's where every problem is created. But having an insight into that can transform any aspect of your life. So today we started with the theme of finding your voice. And I think everyone's expressed it in their own way, that through this understanding, we're each finding our unique voice, or that voice that comes through us. And we don't need to play with anything and trying to control it, just letting it come through us. It almost is like it discovers us. So I'd like to thank everyone's contribution. It felt like a really powerful conversation tonight. Thanking James, Gunter, Sandie, Julie, and Anne-Lise for their time tonight. This will be posted on YouTube, and there'll also be a recording I'll share with everyone. So if anyone wants to get in touch with any of us individually, our names will be up there. You can find us in the usual sources on social media. So yeah, again, thanks everyone for their time, and thanks to anyone who's been watching this and listening. And I hope it has been impactful in some way for you. So thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye there. Just everyone give a wave and say goodbye to the end of the recording.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.